I've said many times to my brother, and I honestly mean this, that I respect him so much for the fact that he's still standing. There was a lot of stuff that impacted him on a very deep emotional level, and I saw him almost exploding with anger, like not being able to, almost not be able to contain it, yeah.
In today's episode of The Adoptee Next Door, I'm joined by Huibert van Wijk, a Dutch documentary filmmaker whose film Child of Their Time was released by Al Jazeera and premiered nationally in September of 2024 at the Netherlands Film Festival, where it was nominated for a Golden Calf for Best Short Documentary. Huibert is not himself an adoptee, but his brother is. And the documentary follows his brother Tim, who was adopted from Indonesia as a baby, and their father, Lex. And it traces how the two of them are really divided by profoundly different interpretations of the same adoption story. Through intimate interviews, archival footage, and a unique healing method, the film explores parent-child relationships through the mechanism of international adoption. At its core, the film is really asking whether such deep-rooted family rupture can be understood or even healed. In our conversation, Huibert and I talk about the ethics of making a film that implicates your own family, the courage required to sit with the moral complexity rather than tidy resolution, and what it means to tell adoption stories that resist that simplicity. And because I know firsthand what it's like to have an intimate portrayal of my own adoption documented in closure, I was especially eager to explore the uncomfortable but necessary question at the heart of this film, which is to understand in whose interest is adoption, really? Huibert, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. I loved watching your film, and it's called A Child of Their Time. And to start, where are you located in the world?
Thanks, glad to be here. I'm in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands.
So tell me how this film came to be. Did you talk with your brother over a long period of time, or when did you decide to film this?
I think it was around 2016 or 17 when we're shooting another film that also kind of revolves around the history of the family that I'm from. And I just noticed that around my brother's adoption, there was so much to unpack still, and there was so much to talk about that the other film that I made was kind of a short documentary, didn't have the space for all those emotions and all that story, that I kind of decided back then that my brother's adoption story probably deserved its own film.
Wow.
But I guess it had been lingering for a longer time. And I think the earliest memory that I have of us talking about it was that we were on a cycling trip together somewhere in the mountains. And I've always been raised with this idea that adoption is maybe the most wonderful thing that you can do. So I also grew up thinking that if I would want to become a father myself one day, that probably my first thought would be adoption. And on this cycling trip, I told this to my brother, and his jaw dropped, and he was looking at me, and he was like, "But don't you see all the pain that came with my adoption?" And I think from that conversation onwards, I couldn't not see it anymore. And I think so there, I guess the idea started to one day tell his story.
Wow. So your outlook was really similar to your dad's, to Lex, in that...
For the longest time, yes.
Idealistic kind of utopia, just save a child if you have the resources.
Exactly. Like I think like most people growing up, you learn from your parents how to look at the world, right? So I copied my parents' worldview, and so only when I was in my 20s and I started having my own conversations with my older brother as like an adult to an adult, only then I started seeing a different perspective on it.
In the Netherlands, I don't know if there is domestic adoptions or foster care in the country, but I'm curious if there is a differentiation for you, for your dad, about international adoption, which your brother talked a lot about, of course, versus adopting within the country.
There is national adoption or adoption within the country.
Domestic, yeah.
You call it domestic? Thanks. There is domestic adoption or foster care, but it's much less compared to intercountry adoption, or at least from the 1960s and onwards. So there's this strange historical coincidence, I think. If you look at the adoption stats, that in the 1960s, the birth control pill was introduced. And so before the 60s, there was a lot of out-of-wedlock children. And that made that there also was a lot of domestic adoptions within the Netherlands. Then the birth control pill got introduced, and there was much less out-of-wedlock or unwanted, I don't know what the best word is to use, babies. So then the amount of children being put up for adoption plummeted, like went almost to zero. And now the strange thing is that I guess the demand from parents who, for whatever reason, couldn't have their own children, that demand stayed the same. So then I guess people started looking across borders to still find kids, I guess. And the painful thing is that, well, there's many painful things in this subject, but the painful thing is that Indonesia is a former colony of the Netherlands. And even though in the 60s, 70s, colonization was over, all this infrastructure was still there. So Indonesia has been one of the main countries for the Netherlands to adopt from, because there were like institutes there, and there monasteries and orphanages had been set up there. So there was like this infrastructure already that was kind of built on an sort of adoption industry kind of built on
exporting kids,
which is a weird thing if you think about it.
Yeah, it's supply and demand, import, export, which is a really uncomfortable thing to talk about when we're talking about beautiful children and human beings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's words that you don't want to connect to human beings. Yeah, exactly.
And I loved the scene in the film, some incredible archival footage of the airplanes full of Indonesian babies being held by women. And then there was a point to which your dad, I think he said, our child didn't grow in someone's belly, but came from the belly of the plane. And you paired that with the footage of all these babies who, in my adoptee perspective, look troubled. The kids are crying, or some are staring off into space, and they're so young that it could be easily misinterpreted or otherly interpreted as they're just uncomfortable, or they've been flying, or maybe they have earache, or all these things. But from me, and I wonder probably from your brother too, it's that visual moment of trauma. And but then hearing your dad talk about it as a joyful thing to get a child from the belly of a plane, that was really powerful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I find this clip you mentioned, I find it gut-wrenching in the sense that you're absolutely right. That's so we see the inside of a plane with I think it's personnel from the airline holding a bunch of Indonesian, presumably babies.
There's probably like
crying.
20 or 25 of them.
A lot of them. And you're absolutely right that we don't know that these babies might also be crying just because they're hungry or like it doesn't have to be connected to adoption. But what I find gut-wrenching about the clip is that you see these adults, so these staffers from the airplane, I guess, kind of laughing and enjoying the presence of the camera, and like they're kind of, it feels like they're showing off something, like I don't know, it has these trophy vibes. Like, look what we're bringing all these kids, or we're saving all these kids. We're like, doing great. While at the same time you see these little creatures just crying their eyes out. And so I've put that clip towards the end of the film, where hopefully you understand a bit more now about the context of my brother's adoption. And I try to kind of juxtapose, if that's the right word in English, it with some very similar archival footage that's very early on in the film. And there we put like a very hopeful 70s music to it, like, this is amazing. We're gonna save the world. And then at the end of the film, there's this clip you mentioned with very solemn music under it. And I think right before the clip starts, my dad says, like, I really think that knowing what I know today, I would probably not adopt anymore. And then you go into this plane and you see this footage that's from the same source material as the stuff you saw very early on in the film, but hopefully your mindset has changed a little bit now. And you can rewatch this footage with like a different idea about the consequences of adoption, I guess.
Wow. It's pretty spectacular. This is definitely a different peek into international adoption world than we're familiar with. And I'm really grateful for you to give Tim this voice, and for your dad who really listened. I'm very curious about your relationship with your dad and how it came to be that he was willing to say what so many adoptive parents won't say out loud, which is that complicated both and of, I love my child, and knowing what I know now, I wouldn't do this again. What is your relationship like that he is able to be that honest, vulnerable, and open on camera?
I think the relationship with my dad generally has been good, but he was very hesitant to participate in the film. Also because, like, when we started, there was a lot of stuff in the media about the illegalities in many inter-country adoption files. There was a commission in the Netherlands that researched this, and the commission was about to give their verdict. And this was the time I started talking to my dad, like, hey, you want to be in this film about Tim's adoption, about my brother's adoption? So initially he was kind of hesitant, because I thought, like, okay, so I'm going to get butchered on national television now.
Yeah.
So I really had to, so we went on some long walks together, my dad and me, before the filming. And I think I really had to explain to him that even though I would never compare the trauma that my brother went through to my dad, because I think it's on a different, like, it's a different universe. But still, I feel like my dad was hurting too, and he was also in pain, and he was also a dad who tried to do good, then noticed that he didn't, or that it went off the rails, and now he had a fallout with his son and didn't talk to his son anymore. So he was also a grieving dad in a way, who wanted to reconnect to his son, didn't know how, and was in pain with the whole situation, and kind of grappling with this idea that he thought that certain assumptions he had about his identity, like, I don't know, trying to do good in the world, that that bedrock maybe wasn't as solid as he had assumed for many years. So I kind of told him, like, I also see your pain, and I also see that you're struggling, and I think that should be part of the film as well, and that holds value for other adoptive parents as well to witness that and think about that. And I also didn't want to make a film where he or adoptive parents in general become like the kind of perpetrators or the villains, because I honestly don't believe that that is a place where reconciliation can come from. Sure. Like, I strongly believe that even in the most difficult conflicts, we have to try to understand the other side a little bit to be able to mend things that are broken. So I think if I would go in and kind of blame my father for the whole thing, then I don't see how that's going to help the conversation between adoptive parents and adoptive kids who've had a fallout.
Really astute and a tightrope to walk. In America,
Yes.
there is a lot of, in America and within the adoptee community and the adoption world, online and in conferences, there does seem to be a very heavy us versus them presence. Adoptees versus adoptive parents, adoptees screaming out to the world, really anger towards adoptive parents. Then a growing faction of adoptive parents who are trying to say much of what your dad said, which is we went in maybe idealistic and naive, but with the best intentions. And since adoption is such a long game experiment, we really only understood the harm that they may have caused, that politics gets involved. They really only understood that 15, 18 years in. And that reckoning of trying to take responsibility for that while loving your child, while giving the more marginalized voices spaces to be angry. So I really commend how you walk that line of both working hard not to portray adoptive parents as villains, but also not overemphasizing Lex and your dad's viewpoints. That was pretty inspiring. Estrangement within adoptive families is really rampant right now. I think all over. I think it's not just related or relegated to adoption, actually. There's a lot of adult children making decisions about relationships with their caregivers. And so it's awesome to see it portrayed and then to actually see the ways that your dad and your brother connect in person. You said you were walking with your dad to talk about filming all of this, and he was very interested because he wanted to have a relationship with his son, with your brother. Were you and this film the reason that they came back together to talk?
I guess it was part of it. I don't want to overestimate my own influence either. I think a big part for my brother also has been finding his birth family.
Sure.
And I think I've seen my brother change from unsettled to a much more grounded person by the sheer fact that he found the people, his lineage and his his birth ground and the village.
I can absolutely understand that. I too felt that. It was a peace, P-E-A-C-E, that I found after just laying eyes on the people who birthed me and then being with people who looked so similar to me and mannerisms. Yeah, that there's something very grounding.
I think I, as a non-adopted person, will never be able to kind of fully grasp that effect, but I did see it happening in my brother, like kind of live. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm the founder of this organization called the Adoptee Mentoring Society, where adoptees virtually connect with each other all over the world. And one term that people often use to describe people like you are kept people. Because non-adopted doesn't have that same weight as the word kept. For many adoptees, they feel like that gets to the biological privilege that you have versus just looking at the other aspect of us adoptees not having. It's like, oh, but the kept people, what they have is privilege to see themselves reflected and have all the answers they need, that kind of thing.
Totally. I've never heard that term. That's interesting. Kept as in not given away, right?
Yeah.
In that sense. Yeah. I've never heard it. I'll use it. Thanks. I mean, it's crazy. Like there are so many things that I never thought about as privilege that I started seeing kind of through the lens of seeing my brother. Stuff like that's, people tell you like, oh, you have this from your grandfather, or just all these little things, or like if I need to go to the doctor and they ask me, are there any heart conditions in your family, that I can actually answer this question,
Right.
all that stuff. That's for the longest time in my life, I have never paused that.
Right. That's the biological privilege, and it's easy to kind of think of it as a little thing, but yeah, for us adoptees, it's huge, and there can be some jealousy. I certainly felt that with one of my siblings, who's my parents' biological daughter, and just envious that answers could be obtained easily.
Yeah. So if we fast forward a little bit in time, I'm sad to say that so after the film was finished, I think the relationship between my brother and my father was improving and finding its way. But now recently it spiraled out of control again. Maybe that's also just the nature of family conflict, that it's kind of back and forth, and it's thin ice, as we say in Dutch. I don't know if you say that in English as well. But something that my brother told me, I think 2 weeks ago or something, that I really felt when he said it, is that in this falling out again, like in this emotional backlash, he did feel again as if he was more of a secondary child, like compared to me, like that my family bond with my father is stronger and more unbreakable than his bond with my father. And that really hurt. That's hurt me in the sense that, not that I'm insulted, but I really felt that when he said that, because I can imagine how much that hurts when you feel that. And sadly, I don't have an argument. I honestly don't have an argument to say it's not true. You know what I mean?
Right. I think that gets back to that biological privilege. There is an assumption, and I think we know from evolutionary biology that there is tribalism. Like, there is a difference when it is your offspring. Whether that's intentional or not is beyond the point. But yeah, I can imagine for you that does not feel great. I remember in the film when your dad used a phrase that I'd not heard before, which he called himself a surrogate father. That was really powerful to me. Can you talk about that moment? And
sure. Yeah, I actually thought that was one of the best things he said in the film. So what he says in this moment is, I'm just a surrogate father to you, but you're not a surrogate son to me.
Yes, right. He said, you are my son, but I am a surrogate father. I've never heard any adoptive parent say that with confidence, without tears. Can you break down exactly what he meant? Had he ever said that to you before?
No, that was also the first time I heard something like that. And I really appreciated him saying that, because I do feel that he's from this generation that in Dutch, they say, we don't see color. You know what I mean?
Yes, we say that here too.
Right.
Yes.
So, and I think that's part of the problem. That's part of why there's a disconnect. So this goes back to what we just talked about, right? Like that my brother feels that his relationship to the family is different than my relationship to the family, but no one acknowledged it, right? And every time he brings something like that up, it's like, no, all children are the same. We love everyone equally. And then I think, no, you don't. Like, and I think acknowledging...
Right, and we know, like, I teach about color blindness, and actually kind of upgraded language is color evasiveness, which comes from one of my favorite professors from Stanford, Dr. Subini. She talks about how it's color blindness is really saying, like, I don't even notice anything, but color evasiveness is like, it's an action. In order to not see my color, you have to see it. And then you have to choose what your point of neutrality is, what you actually prefer. And whiteness is usually the status quo and the norm. So it's really saying, I'm actively not seeing this part of you, but trying to disguise it as, I just love you the way you are, but really not realizing you're really insulting someone at the same time.
But I think what you're just saying now to me is like the essence of the thing that's so painful around adoption, that as soon as anything comes at the core of it that hurts, everything immediately gets covered with like good intentions, but like which is like in part true, but like it shouldn't negate all these things that are important to talk about, right?
Exactly. Yes, that is the crux of this whole adoption complexity. and that's where your dad Lex was, or what made it into the film, really seemed like he no longer believed that love would cover everything. And that was...
Sorry, I completely forgot that we were talking about the scene. Yeah. So I was kind of I was kind of impressed with him saying that line, because I felt it was the first time that he could actively acknowledge that his perspective on the adoption and Tim's perception on the adoption are so fundamentally different, and that that for him, Tim is a true son, but that he also recognized that he will never be a true father to Tim, but he's just a replacement father.
I wish that could be said without the feelings that even I feel of like, oh no, there's just such a sense of ownership. I write about this in my book, but parenting, that title of mother and father, it just comes with so much like, this is mine. It's my right. And that's where so many adoptive parents have a hard time sharing their child with their kids' birth parents, because they're like, I'm the mom, I'm the dad. So for that word, surrogate, replacement, to be said in tandem with what we see is the love that your dad has for your brother is so powerful. We're going to pause here for a moment to hear from our sponsors. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, I'm Juliet Rubin Ramirez, CFO of the Adoptee Mentoring Society. Adoptees, much like myself, often carry tough questions quietly, questions about identity, family, and belonging. At AMS, we provide adoptees 12 and up a place to share those questions out loud with trained adoptee mentors who've walked the same path. Informed by research, our mentorship programming offers one-on-one and group support through the Adoptee Lounge, spaces where adoptees can safely put words to what's often been silent. To learn more about our research-informed mentorship and what our community is saying, visit adopteementorship.org.
I see the mannequin dummy thingy behind you in your office right now.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
what
one.
you call it. Yeah. That's such a striking visual metaphor in using that and having the box. And I'm wondering if you can describe it for people who are listening and haven't yet seen the film. And then if you can share how you came up with that idea and this tactic.
Right. So the film consists of a bunch of archival footage and interviews and scenes that we shot in the present time. But then interwoven throughout the entire film is a recurring scene of Lex, my father, and Tim, my brother, who are in a family constellation therapy setting where they try to kind of understand each other's viewpoints and try to work to a more common understanding. And we designed this setting with a kind of group of mannequins that then get to represent either family members or trauma, and they can kind of play around with that and place these mannequins in the space they're in and relate to those mannequins. And then I feel that abstract themes like trauma or abandonment can become kind of physical, and they can talk about it and touch it and move it. And
right.
And that's kind of the purpose of that
right.
scene.
Right. So just one question was asking your brother to put rejection outside of the box, and then asked how that feels. That was so palpable and kind of hard to watch him even do that as an adoptee, because I think I said aloud what your brother said. Like, it can't go outside the box. It's here, but for sake of this kind of therapeutic approach, we could try it. But, oh, yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, and I think the painful part in that moment is mostly also that my dad decides to move it, right? He said like,
Yes.
okay, this idea for rejection, we've talked enough about that now. We can move that out. And then my brother's like, kind of like,
Can't
no,
do that. Right.
you can't do that. It's
Yeah.
part of me.
It reminded me of some of my early work. This was 15 years ago. I worked as a caseworker, approving couples to adopt newborns. And it was a long process, and I did a lot of investigative work with the families to understand if they were ready for this. And then they would get a child, and for a good handful of the cases that I did, those couples divorced later on. And my heart broke because I knew as an adoptee to not only have that first separation from our first family, and then to have these people choose to adopt you and then choose to separate felt especially cruel. And for me, I was having a hard time separating the couple and a decision they may have needed to make for their own healthy happiness with the child they chose to bring into their life and that extra layer. And I know that's a story for you and for your brother. Mm-hmm. Did you realize that was a common experience for adoptees who have parents of divorce, that it would be another blow in such a big way?
Yeah, I guess it's rejection topped on more rejection, right? Like, I think any child of divorced parents will feel pain, and I think also any child, especially if the parents divorce at a young age, I think it's just the children's mind that somehow will think it's their fault.
Yes.
Yeah, right? Or they are not enough, or they're not.
Even if parents have never stated that to them directly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think, I think for no child, a divorce is a good thing, but like there are situations where like staying together is even worse. So, it happens.
Absolutely. Right.
But then if a child already carries the baggage of surviving an adoption, and that moment of rejection that usually has, for most kids, has happened in this super vulnerable first 3 years of their life, where you just need a lot of hugs and kisses and safety and protection. I think that's just blow after blow. That I've said many times to my brother, and I honestly mean this, that I respect him so much for the fact that he's still standing, given what his life has been like, and that he's still here, right? And that he's still plowing through and trying to make the best of it. I honestly respect that so much, and I don't know if I would have been able to if I walked in his shoes.
Well, I think I wanted to talk about that, in how open he was on camera talking about his rage and anger and being a survivor. I mean, I remember when he talked about wanting to bash your dad's head in for taking him. What was your brother's hopes for the film in being that honest? Is he proud of this, being out in the world? Does he feel strength?
My brother is just amazing in this way, that this is just who he is, right? Like there's not a button he turns on for the film or something.
He's not filtering himself to.
No, this is just how he is. If he trusts people, then stuff will just come out as he feels it or as he thinks it, which I find amazing. Because so many people layer stuff behind, like, I don't know, social conventions, politeness, possible ramifications, and he just gives it raw as it is.
Or for many adoptees, they may not know they're hiding, but they want to please their adoptive parents, don't want to hurt their adoptive parents. There's so many adoptees who go through the world with righteous anger, like your brother, but really repress it. And that's part of my work. Is it's been amazing how many adoptees come to me after their parents have died, and they say, now I'm ready to talk about adoption, not recognizing that they've wanted to talk about it forever, but out of loyalty, respect.
Oh man, that is so beautiful and sad in the same time. I feel like when we started the project, so the whole thing kind of span over 6 years or something, like not the actual shooting, but we were trying to get funding, and or I was, and then we got a little bit of money and we shot a little bit, and then we got some more money and we shot some more. So the whole thing spun over 6 years more or less. But before we even started, so back when we first started talking about this, both within our family, but also in the broader society in the Netherlands, no one was hearing him out. Like literally, like because there was no public debate around adoption. We had like a television show going on that was trying to find a birth family, but it was very focused on the spectacle of it. So there was no aftercare, it was just like, we get the tears and we move out. Yep. That was basically what there was on television around adoption. And the little debate publicly that was there was mostly about illegalities in files, which is a very important subject. Like, don't get me wrong, but there was very little talk about the intrinsic emotional damage that can happen when you remove a child from a very early age from their birth mother, and especially if you ship them across the world to like a totally different culture.
Yep. Which is your brother's incredible phrase, feeling like a polar bear in a Spanish zoo.
Exactly. Yeah. That was so well put of him. Yeah. So back when we started, I think what really drew him to the project was telling this story, right? Like the idea that there now was like a stage or a megaphone or whatever you want to think of to tell this story and to share this pain and to be taken seriously in his hurt, and for once maybe not here, but oh, aren't you thankful then?
That's great. And your relationship with him, what is it like?
It has always been good. Like I'm his younger brother. He was already there when I was born, and I looked up to him always because he was like bigger and cooler and faster and stronger. So like as soon as I was allowed to, I went over to his house for like sleepovers, and we did all kind of stuff that our parents wouldn't allow. So I thought my brother was really cool, and I think we had a good bond, but. Making this film together like seriously deepened it, and going through this stuff together and like visiting Indonesia and his birth family together, that seriously deepened our connection.
Yeah.
I'd
love to hear you talk about that moment when you asked, is it Sumi?
Mm-hmm.
To support Tim when he was having emotional breakdown getting his adoption file. Tell me about your thought process as the filmmaker, as a brother. I think once you got into the car, you asked, do you want me to turn off the camera? I think I remember you asking. Anyways, bring me back to that moment. Maybe like set the stage for the viewers who haven't yet seen, or the listeners who haven't yet seen the film.
Right. So we are in this orphanage in Indonesia, in central Java. And it turns out his adoption file is still there, and he can leaf through it. And then he finds kind of a scribbled note in the inside of the file that kind of states the price that he went for. Or at least that's what we thought in the moment. Like later on it turned out to be something else, but that's what we thought in the moment.
And he does say, wow, this is a lot to think about how much I cost. Yes. And this is verbatim. I think chapter 3 in my book is how much did I cost? Because every adoptee thinks about that at some point.
Hey, you don't want to know, right? Like this is painful, I think. No, like you don't.
It's
there
just
shouldn't be a
such
price tag on anyone's head. Yeah. So that's the stuff that's still in the edit. There was some other things in the file, like a letter from my father that he wrote to the adoption agency, like right after the adoption, and that. So there was a lot of stuff that impacted him on a very deep emotional level, and I saw him like almost exploding with anger, like not being able to, almost not be able to contain it. Yeah.
Yep.
And then as I was filming, so I had like the wireless microphone stuff coming through my headphones. So I also heard the things that he kind of mumbled to no one. So I really felt.
Oh, I see.
I really felt things were spiraling out of control emotionally a little bit. But I also felt in that moment that his frustration or anger was very much also geared towards the Dutch parents buying him, right? And I wear my father's last name and my father's skin color, right? So I kind of felt like this is not the moment to have another white guy go up to him and say like, it's okay, because it wasn't okay. And Sumi,
almost like you
wife,
you were like the closest thing, not just the closest, but you were an easy place to project the anger.
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would have happened if I would have gone up to him in that moment. But I felt like his wife, who was also there, who is also an Indonesian adoptee, was in that moment a much better person to kind of catch all those feelings or understand those feelings or comfort him than me as his white brother.
I really love that because I think that goes against the grain of whiteness, which deep down is typically a feel like white people can fix it. Like, and it's not a conscious thought. And I think if for white folks, they have to do a lot of unlearning, a lot of work to recognize that you are not the person at all times to fix X, Y, and Z. So I'm so grateful that you had so much wherewithal to understand that. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, and this is, I mean, in all honesty, this is something that I still also struggle with sometimes, because I also do think sometimes, like in making this film and in trying to mend this bond, am I not also my father in a way, that I try to like fix things that maybe aren't fixable or something? So it's also a bit of a back and forth with myself, like where I am and this, what my position is or should be in this sense. And I haven't figured it out completely still.
I think part of that as a filmmaker for you is allowing the subjects a voice in the process. So I'm really curious how much your brother participated in the filmmaking process.
In that sense, that I try to be transparent in what we're doing, but not in the sense that he was in the editing room or something. No.
So I know this film is available for viewers to watch on YouTube right now, and that it also had other broadcasts, if that's right. But I'm curious if there was any scenes that didn't make the final cut that you wish did.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Al Jazeera has been great so far, because now all of a sudden the film hits a global audience, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. But the online version of the film, we did need to cut out some stuff, and one of the things that's maybe nice to mention is there was this lovely moment during the wedding of Tim and Sumi that is still in the film, that one of their friends grabbed the mic, and she said, like, I want to use this moment to think about all the people that are not here in this wedding hall, right? Because a lot of adopted people there, a lot of white folks, but all these adopted people are also connected to families of origin that weren't able to fly across the world and attend the wedding, or that aren't even known where they are. And I thought it was so powerful that she took that moment and made us all there aware that these people are out there.
Wow. That is so powerful. Birth families are just often so, they are like not only forgotten, but like not even there sometimes. It's so easy to just disregard or overlook. So I love that was just someone in the wedding that did that.
Yeah, so it was one of Sumi's very close friends, who is also adopted herself,
That's gorgeous. I love that. Well, I can't thank you enough for bringing this film out into the world. And I did start to peruse the comments on the YouTube, and I did see a lot of the age-old, he should just be grateful sort of language. And I did see others pushing back. And so I felt like, for me, that's a win, like moving that conversation forward.
I totally agree. And it has been lovely in a way to witness this from the sideline as well for me. I mean, some reactions are very ugly, but I mean, it is the internet after all. But I have found it heartwarming that now there's also this online community of people that we don't know, that my brother doesn't know, that, well, sometimes he now knows them because they sent him DMs, but there is this online community giving collective pushback to these uninformed opinions. And I find it heartwarming that it's not only my brother's fight anymore, but now it's a communal fight. Yeah.
Yes. And my mission is that it's not just adoptees fighting back and saying, listen to us, but it's people like you. It's siblings. It's the kept people who are recognizing this too. Yeah. Yes. I don't know if you knew this, but there are adoption camps in the United States. So places where families go. And there's one camp in particular that has a specific group for biological children of the parents. I've loved that because it's like historically there hasn't been a lot of space for siblings to talk about how they feel about an adoption in their family. So I love that you're on the podcast to give that voice too. It's a unique one, and especially with so much kindness towards the whole complex thing that is adoption.
Thank you. I appreciate those words.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I have loved getting to know you, Huibert.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm Angela Tucker, and that was The Adoptee Next Door. Thanks for listening. You can find the link to view Child of Their Time in the show notes. Thanks to Al Jazeera, it is available on YouTube. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out my book. It's called You Should Be Grateful: Stories of Race, Identity, and Transracial Adoption. And if you're an adoptee, you're invited to join the Adoptee Lounge, a private virtual community that I've built through my nonprofit, the Adoptee Mentoring Society. And you can learn more and sign up at adopteementorship.org. Or you can find out more about my other work at angelatucker.com. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps. See you next time.